Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here. Welcome back to Tesla Daily. Today we are talking about some price cuts from Tesla in Europe and the US. We've also got updates on Megapack, Hardware 4, a couple things in China, and more. Bit of an underperformance from Tesla stock to start the week, finishing down 2% on the day to close at $193.81, while the Nasdaq was down just 0.1% on the day. Some of that may have had to do with the price cuts that we'll talk about now. Most publicized would be those in the United States. So we'll break out our price tracking table. We can see here these affected the Model S and X, all trims. The Long Range S and the Plaid S both down $5,000 from before. The Long Range X and Plaid X both down $10,000. So this actually puts the Plaid Model S and X at the same starting price. Both Plaid versions at $109,990 are priced $10,000 under their initial unveiling price. So remember, they were priced the same at the unveiling. But very important to remember, both the Long Range S and the Long Range X, those are still $10,000 above the price that they were immediately listed at following the unveiling. So like we have talked about with all trims, we're just seeing prices come back to where they had been previously, especially here with the S and the X. We've noted the inventory position many times, so not very surprising and also not something that I find concerning. Remember, with the scale of the S and the X at this point, the impact of what roughly amounts to a $7,500 price cut would be in the same ballpark as a $750 price cut on the Model 3 and Y, probably even less. So it's not nothing, it's just a smaller part of the business these days. The opening price points are still priced above the unveiling prices, and you have a larger spread between those base prices for the Model 3 and the Model Y than we did back at that time. Not every single customer is going to be cross-shopping those, but some are, so it does make a difference. Plus, you layer in the $7,500 possible tax credit, that spread grows even wider, although the impact of that when we're talking about vehicles in the S and the X range, that'd be a little bit more limited because of the income limits. So I've said for a while that I wouldn't be surprised to see price cuts on the S and the X. We're seeing that now. I still wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see that. Again, just based on Tesla's initial pricing plans. Plus you gotta figure interest rates increasing, that does increase the effective cost for a lot of people, even if the list price is the same. And on that base version, again, it's still $10,000 higher. On the S and the X in particular, there's also the consideration of the impact of Hardware 4, but we'll talk more about that in a second. Now, probably more important than the price cuts on the S and the X are some pricing actions that Tesla has taken in Europe. They seem to have pretty broadly started to offer discounts on new vehicles that are in Tesla inventory, seeing this in many countries for the Model 3 and the Model Y. And remember, this is the kind of action that we saw Tesla take before, just now lowering the prices on the S and the X in the US. The discounts that they're offering seem to be relatively wide in terms of the range, some 1% to 2%, some like this Model 3 in Germany up to 9% off the list price. So pretty significant in some cases. Again, maybe a prelude to some further price adjustments in Europe. We saw Tesla take that action in the UK this weekend, actually lowering the list prices in the UK by about 6% on the base Model 3 and Model Y. So hopefully Tesla's costs are coming down considerably alongside these price reductions. But I do continue to think that margins are going to be crunched for a little bit. Thankfully, I do think Tesla's Investor Day, even if it's not really fully recognized by the market at this exact moment, did a good job of explaining why focusing on price cuts and margins and things like that right now, while they're not necessarily unimportant, are still just a small part of the business that Tesla is working very hard and working very quickly on becoming. We seem to be kind of back to the push and pull that we're so often in Tesla's history between short-term concerns and long-term vision and expectations for the company. Another price adjustment that we may have is on the Megapack. Sawyer Merritt on Twitter noting that the base price for the 2-hour Megapack version has increased by $100,000. It's always a little bit more difficult to track Megapack pricing as it does depend on configuration, but if they're raising the price on a base configuration, that could be a good thing for the average overall, if those changes follow suit elsewhere. Obviously, Tesla seems to have plenty of room to be able to do that with Megapack being sold out for so long. Hopefully, Tesla capitalizing on that demand. We've also got an update on a Megapack project in the UK. This is a 196 megawatt hour project that has come online here in early March. The article is calling this Europe's biggest battery energy system, but I feel like we've talked about some more recently. Maybe those were just for announcements. Kind of hard to keep track these days of these Megapack announcements, which is a great thing in and of itself, but always fun to see those come online and the excitement that that generates in the region. Next, we've got an update on Tesla's Hardware 4. It looks like these vehicle deliveries are now finally commencing. User Jason Clinton on Reddit has shared his experience with picking up a new Model X Plaid that apparently has Hardware 4. Says the build date was February 25th, and Tesla showed him the internal inventory screen that said Hardware 4, said the system had a Phoenix radar, which there's good reason to be a little bit skeptical of things like that sometimes, but in this case, he has shared numerous photos. These photos match the photos that we had seen from the kilowatts of vehicles on Tesla's Fremont lot. So this would seem to be at least an early iteration of Hardware 4. I doubt this is fully complete, but pretty clearly the forward-facing cameras are updated. The side repeater cameras look to be a little bit different. Probably notably, it does still have the pillar cameras. There was some debate on the camera naming, if those would still be remaining. And then at this time, there don't seem to be any notable new camera positions. There doesn't seem to be a front bumper camera like we saw on the Cybertruck prototype. So at least for the time being, the layout seems very similar. But remember, there had been some rumors or leaks that the other cameras would come later on. If that were the case, whether these vehicles would get those cameras retrofitted or sort of be a hardware 3.5, I guess would remain to be seen. As for right now, this customer is saying that most of the features for Autopilot aren't usable. Autopilot itself, Navigate on Autopilot, FSD beta, even a lot of the visualizations, apparently it's not rendering vehicles at this time, really just lane lines is all that's working. So definitely in a weird period of time right now regarding the S and the X and Hardware 4 in general. Tesla moves pretty fast and sometimes that results in temporary situations like this, but hopefully we get some more clear answers soon. All right, next we've got a couple of updates on Tesla in China. New China TV has shared a walkthrough of Giga Shanghai. This is interesting because it is a channel that is sponsored by the China government. The video is produced in English, so it would seem like, at least to an extent, they're trying to highlight the progress that Tesla has made, Giga Shanghai, to other foreign investors. It's a pretty small thing, but maybe that helps a little bit with some concerns around the relationship there. That may be the biggest takeaway other than being a good factory tour. So if you want a little bit more information on how things are set up there in Giga Shanghai, this does give a decent walkthrough and again is in English. So I'll put the link for that down in the description today. Next on China was something interesting I happened to see on Twitter. This was shared by Charles W. Boy. I'm not certain of the original source here, but there is a sort of infographic that talks about the fatality rates for Teslas compared to other vehicles in China. It looks like it's using insured vehicle counts and then the number of fatalities for those vehicles that are reported. And that data is showing that Tesla has a 14 times lower fatality rate. Obviously, that would be a great number. I wouldn't actually be too surprised if that was true, but I'm a little skeptical of this. They actually cite tesladeaths.com as where they are pulling their fatality rate number from, so I don't know how accurate that would be. Probably not the best source. And if that's where they're getting their Tesla data from, then what about the rest of the data? I don't know. Just doesn't seem like the best mix of sources here. So if someone can point me to better source data, I would love that. But until then, even though it sounds exciting, I probably wouldn't go, parading around this information. All right, last couple of things. We've got a quick report on the Cybertruck. This was from Not a Tesla app. They are saying that Tesla has reopened Cybertruck reservations in Canada and Mexico. This report I'm also not 100% sure on. When Tesla back in May last year had stopped taking reservations outside of North America, they were still taking reservations in the US, Canada, and Mexico. So I saw this posted a few places today, but I'm not sure that Tesla actually ever stopped in Canada and Mexico to be restarting. Obviously notable if they did, but did want to provide that background and just see if anyone in the comments today has a more concrete idea on if those ever actually stopped in those locations. Lastly, just a quick update that we're catching up on from last week. Waymo had announced that throughout the course of the year across 2 rounds of layoffs, they had cut approximately 8% of their staff, or a little over 200 jobs. So obviously whenever Tesla does that, tons of attention, but just trying to highlight that this is happening more broadly even in the autonomous driving world. All right, that is it for today then. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Tuesday, March 7th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.